come on. He just needs to resign. That makes everything easier. Then he doesn't have to put the NDP supply in confidence. I have no idea what's going in that caucus right now. It boggles my mind. I have no idea how they are supporting him. It really, it boggles my mind.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Today we conclude the latest Fergus scandal by recapping what happened during debate and the multiple votes that occurred on Tuesday, May the 28th.
Let's take a look. So, one thing that we were not prepared for, and we didn't expect, is that early in the day on Tuesday the 28th, right before they were going to debate this again, because they actually adjourned it the day before as a result of a motion by the Liberals with a promise to resume debate on the next available day, which is Tuesday. The Liberals actually moved a motion, and what that motion was for was to actually time limit the amount of debate for this motion of privilege that the Conservatives actually brought up. So that's what's happening right now that we're showing you. So the speaker is actually reading out the motion, and the vote is beginning. He's asking everyone who agrees with it, please stand. And of course, all of the Liberals are standing, and it is to nobody's surprise, nobody's at all, that that sellout Singh and the NDP back the Liberals on this so that they could actually time limit the debate.
This is concerning to me because they are limiting debate on a question of privilege. A question of privilege is extremely, extremely serious, as we've mentioned multiple times before. So the fact that the Liberals are putting forward a motion to limit the debate regarding such a serious matter, and the NDP are backing it up, I think that really shows what they think about our democracy.
And for the record, if this ever happens in the next government, assuming the Conservatives, win the majority, if this ever happens that a Liberal or an NDP member rises on a question of privilege and the Conservatives do the exact same thing, we would have the exact same problem with it.
Because again, a question of privilege is serious. It means that the MP or MPs are being impeded in their ability to work for their constituents, to work for Canadians.
So the next thing that happened, obviously, was the actual debate itself. And that went on for hours and hours and hours. So you may actually say, well, they did get a fair shot at it, because I think the total debate was probably between 6 and 8 hours between both days. But still, it's not something that we feel should be limited. But we did, get to review a lot of the speakers that actually rose and asked questions. A lot of Conservative MPs rose, obviously. A lot of Quebec MPs rose on it. Of course, you had Kevin Lammer on the other side, playing, evil Bob Newhart, that was standing up and trying to refute all of this. But there was one speech, and we'll show you a section of that, from Michelle Rempel-Garner, that I think deserves some airtime. So here's her speech on this.
So what happened, now that we're on the third incident, the third case of privilege where the speaker has demonstrated partisan behavior, is that it's very clear that impartiality has been breached. And now it's not just about this place, it's about Canadians' faith in this place being able to fairly and neutrally function as a voice, a place where their voices can be heard. Because if the speaker is being partisan for the Liberal Party, then the 120,000 people I represent do not have fair hearing in this House automatically. And that is why I implore to the speaker, we can respect each other as partisans for our ability to be partisans, but the speaker, I implore him to resign on his own accord, because his legacy is now having breached that impartiality to the point where any decision he makes, any ruling that he makes, is going to be viewed through that lens. And that degrades Canadian democracy. So when we're talking about wasting House time, the Speaker should have resigned already. That is the right thing to do. That's what he should have done. Now, how does this impact his three roles? First of all, the Speaker presides over all debate in the House and is responsible for enforcing and interpreting rules of the House. Already, the Speaker, outside of the three instances, has had to recuse himself on questions regarding the government withholding information in order paper questions or misleading the House. Why? Because they were order paper questions he signed off on in his role as parliamentary secretary. That's problematic in and of itself. Then, with these partisanship, not just allegations, like a clear case of privilege being found, which is why we're debating this right now, right? When he makes the decision to remove someone, it is going to be debated through a partisan lens, automatically, because of his partisan finding. And he's already lost the confidence of a significant number of this House. Many opinion columns have been written, and rightly so, saying, how can he continue on in his role when two of the major political parties say that he has lost confidence? And this is not something that's par for the course. This doesn't happen every parliament. This is the first time it's happened. It is a remarkable decline in parliament, and he is presiding it over. So if we're going to talk about people wasting the time of this House, he should have resigned already of his own accord. That is what the honorable thing he should have done. But so he can't do his first role. He can't neutrally proceed, preside over the proceedings of this place. The second thing his second duty is the Chief Administrative Officer of the House. And I did raise this issue in committee and proc today. I also raised this with the House Leader of the NDP in debate today, respectfully. And he didn't answer the question, which is how can, given these partisan allegations, he be the presiding officer over the House of Commons harassment policy? How is that possible? And put everything aside for a minute. This is really serious. If you look through the transcript of the day in May of 2016, when the Prime Minister elbowed former NDP MP Ruth Ellen Brosseau in the chest, I draw your attention, House, to the comments of the member from Churchill, as well as the member from Victoria. Oh, I'm sorry. One of my good colleagues, I'm forgetting your riding, and I should know it off the top of my head. Esquimalt-Sanishsuit. They rightly said that the member from Churchill said, if we were to apply a gendered lens, it's very important to recognize that young women in this place need to feel safe to come to work here. She gave this whole detailed account of what happened. And the Speaker, you know what he did? He jumped up right after the member from Churchill spoke these words and said, no, if anyone wants to exaggerate the situation and make this into something that it's not, make it reminiscent of a dive in the 2006 World Cup, perhaps we can go on. I think it might be exaggerated. So he was not only denigrating Ruth Ellen Brosseau, but he was also denigrating the account of harassment from the member from Churchill. And then he goes on to say, what happened was exactly as the Prime Minister had described it. So these two women had experienced it differently. Now,
wow. We've shown this video before. Everyone, I think, remembers this when Trudeau, went and grabbed one of his fellow colleagues because they wanted to, get on with the vote, and in the process, elbowed or assaulted one of the NDP members of Parliament, and Tom Mulcair, who was the leader of the party at the time, didn't see what happened until afterwards, and then finally did, and then walks up to Trudeau and starts yelling at him that he's pathetic, that he elbowed a woman. Pathetic. And this is what Greg Fergus had to say at the time. Oh, well, yeah, that's basically a dive. That didn't happen.
I, too, had witnessed this event, Mr. Speaker. I would like to not try to take this any further than that what has been described and what, frankly, Mr. Speaker, I think might have been exaggerated. But, Mr. Speaker, what I would like to say is that I did see the honourable member.
Order.
If one wants to exaggerate the situation and to make this into something that it wasn't, to make this reminiscent of a dive in the 2006 World Cup, perhaps we can go on. But, Mr. Speaker, what had happened was exactly as the Prime Minister had described it. And it was certainly not a purposeful, an intentional movement. The person was out of sight and behind the Speaker, behind the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, and it was only that.
That's disgusting. As a woman, that's disgusting.
Well, and Trudeau, the feminist, right?
Only when it suits him.
The Liberals, the party of the feminists, of women's rights, right? Obviously not. Like, I guess if you're not a liberal woman, it doesn't count. So, you know, I wanted to play this clip because Michelle Rumpel-Garner raises a very, very good point, because the Speaker is the Chief Administrative Officer of the House and oversees the process where complaints of harassment are made. Well, given what he said way back in 2016, didn't give a damn about a woman being assaulted on the floor of the House of Commons right in front of everybody on camera, and he's expected to be the arbiter over cases of harassment in the House of Commons. Right. So, anyway, Michelle Rumpel-Garner, she becomes so incredulous just as to the fact that they're even here. She's barely able to actually make it through the rest of the speech, but we'll play a little more for you.
Put partisanship aside for a second. We're being asked in this place to suspend our disbelief that the Speaker can somehow magically go from that to being the neutral arbiter of the House of Commons harassment policy. And now he has 3 strikes of partisanship against him. How is any staff member, how do we know that vexatious complaints aren't going to be made? How do I know that I couldn't go there and have that leaked to the Liberal whip and have it go to the media? He's effectively put a chill on anybody wanting to talk about harassment in this place, and yet the NDP are propping him up. Why?
Yeah,
like, I'm not saying this, again, like, I'm just, like, this boggles my mind. And it's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. The last thing is that the Speaker is the representative or spokespersons for the House in relationships or authorities outside of Parliament. And yet you had the Speaker in his robes talking about being a young Liberal in this capacity in Washington, D.C. Like, his international relation is now a spokesperson for the Liberal Party. Like, come on. He just needs to resign. That makes everything easier. Then he doesn't have to put the NDP supply in confidence. I have no idea what's going in that caucus right now. It boggles my mind. I have no idea how they are supporting him. It really... I boggles my mind.
You're not the only one, Michelle.
Yeah, Canadians are having difficulty understanding as well. The NDP aren't getting anything from this deal with the devil, with Trudeau. So why do they continue to support him, especially on matters that are not related to supply and confidence?
Right. Like, they are not bound by the supply and confidence agreement to keep the Speaker where he is. So what's the deal? The only deal that I can think of is it's just a way for the NDP to say, well, you know, we need to screw the Conservatives.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's no guarantee that the Speaker won't be biased against the NDP when it suits him. This is the danger of keeping a biased Speaker in office, like in his position.
Or, you know, who knows if there's a personal issue that the Speaker thinks is to his advantage to rule a certain way or act a certain way, that it's not even in the party's best interest. It's in his personal interest. How do we know? And that's the problem. We don't, right? We don't.
Well, and Michelle Rumpel-Garner had made a great point where she said, I have like no ill will against Greg as a person, but he's incompetent and needs to step down. I mean, you could be a great person and be horrible at your job. You could be a horrible person and be great at your job. You could be somewhere in between. But Fergus has proven he does not have the skill set required to be the Speaker of the House of Commons.
Well, and here's the thing. You know who's one person on the Conservatives you would never see sign up to be Speaker of the House? Garnet Jenness. Why? Because he knows he's too partisan.
And again, there's nothing wrong with being partisan.
Right.
Political parties need partisan politicians.
Yeah, it has a place in politics. However, in order to be the Speaker, you need a non-partisan person. You want to talk about non-partisan and someone who's able to maintain their cool? How about John Brassard?
Yeah, especially after yesterday. Oh my goodness.
Right? After Khalid, like just acting like an absolute child. Go and see that video if you haven't watched it. Those are the guys that should, be given consideration. I'm not saying John Brassard should be Speaker, but it's that type of person that is able to keep their cool and try and keep things fair.
Well, and he could do it if he wanted, right? Again, just because you are wanting to do a job does not necessarily mean you are suited to do a job. For example, if I wanted to be a politician, I don't think I could do it because I don't have the personality type. I'm way too shy. I'm not aggressive enough. I would not be a good politician, right? It's the same thing where maybe Fergus wanted to be the Speaker of the House, but he just kind of jumped the line. Instead of going through the training that he needed, he went from super hyper partisan to Speaker of the House, who's supposed to be nonpartisan, and either doesn't understand the difference or doesn't care to learn. I don't know.
So this went on, Michelle's speech was at around 6 o'clock p.m. on the 28th. And the speeches continued throughout. The speeches continued throughout. And they decided to wrap it up at around 8 o'clock at night and have the vote. And so the vote went. So the Conservatives in the bloc all voted to remove the Speaker from the House. And as expected, Sellout Singh strikes again. Him and his caucus refused to support the removal of the Speaker. And Michelle's right. Fergus is only going to be remembered for how partisan he was. Nothing else. So, good luck with that, Greg. That's your legacy. Some people, in the Liberals, they want to say, he's the first black speaker. No, he's not going to be remembered for that. He's going to be remembered as one of the most partisan speakers and the only speaker to go from being parliamentary secretary to the prime minister, which is the most partisan and biased position in the government, to supposedly be a good speaker who has to be the most nonpartisan position in government.
Well, and if he wanted to be speaker, he should have started, chairing a committee or as assistant deputy speaker. Like, there's so many different things that could have led Fergus down the correct path so that he would have the skill set to be an excellent speaker. But instead, he went from hyper-partisan to non-partisan. And again, he's not doing it very well because he didn't receive that training in the middle.
Right. So that's how it went down, folks. I don't think a lot of people were surprised. But I think there was a hint of hope because the NDP had said last time, if this happens again, we're going to vote him out.
I'm not surprised, but I am disappointed. Because the NDP, again, are the ones propping up this government, propping up this biased speaker, and they're doing it to the detriment of Canadians.
Yep. And all they're going to see going forward, they're not going to go anywhere in the polls. They're done. They are done. They have made their bed and they have to lie in it. Even if they try and call an election for the spring of next year, it's too late.
No, they've done damage to this party for years.
Yep. And I think Singh and whoever else is there, I guess they're just saying, you know what, we just want to hold on to relevance for as long as possible, because after this, nobody's going to want to talk to them on CTV. Nobody's going to want to talk to them on CBC, on CPAC. Like, why would you?
Well, and Canadians are not going to want to vote for them because the NDP are showing that they don't have Canadians' backs. When we have a biased speaker in the House, that is a huge problem for Canadians. It means we are underrepresented in the House of Commons.
On a good note, the more the speaker screws up, the more he shows his true colors, the more we get to show it to Canadians, and the more, hopefully, the more Canadians will actually see the Liberals for how they truly are, and it will just prop up the Conservative majority even higher than it already is.